Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm excited to do another food talk episode. I've got some good feedback on these episodes. I have fun doing them. Of course, I love cooking, and it's the middle of summer here in the States. And as my garden actually attempts to grow, okay, I know most people's garden right now, it's like boom, full on, here comes everything. Ours, it's like okay. Which is like very disappointing to me as somebody who loves to cook. And I am in this place where I'm like, I'm not I'm not buying my fruits and vegetables from the grocery store. I mean, yeah, I don't think that's completely doable. Like, yeah, at least where we're at in our farm right now, we're 9, 10 months in of our farming. We're definitely not in a place to just be self-sustainable ourselves, but I'm shopping at the farmer's market, and of course our garden, what it provides, which is like, okay, we got some arugula, we got a shit ton of herbs. That's been awesome. The tomatoes are growing, the peppers are growing, the corn's growing. It's a little behind. I put them in the ground late. We've been focusing on our animals the first year. As I think most of you know, we've butchered 40 of our meat chickens. Me, my wife, and our farmhand and friend Andrea butchered all of our chickens. So we've got that. We've got that in the freezer. We've got our chickens. We've got our laying hens, which today's a celebration because we had our first egg today. It's like, wow. It's so nerdy, but it's like, just Jen's in the hen house cleaning it out, and she's like, oh my god, oh my god, I think somebody's like dying. And I run out there, and she's like holding this tiny egg in her hand. And when they first start to lay, the eggs are tinier. So I'm like, oh, oh, thank god. Like, nobody fucking died. But so that was exciting today. But my recent butter making experiment was such a success that I may have contacted several people on Craigslist and several local farmers looking for a Jersey cow, female, of course, because they produce the most milk. And I need to start making homemade butter, like, legit. And I don't do great with cow milk, but butter, whole cream, awesome. So anyway, I am definitely in the market for a Jersey cow, or I should say plural cows, because you never want to have one animal. They're gonna get bored, they're gonna get lonely, right? So cows plural. And my latest experiment with butter making has piqued my interest and desire to make my own truly from scratch on a regular basis. So basically during this episode, I'm going to teach you how to make homemade butter. And it's easy. Like, don't even sweat it, don't even panic, think like, oh, it's going to take all day. Honestly, it's not. It's one of the easiest things to make. Literally a 4-year-old could do it. I'm not kidding. It's fucking simple to make homemade butter. So I can't tell you how much I enjoyed making butter, because you have this thing that costs so much in the store, in the grocery store, and it's like this prized commodity. And literally in less than 10 minutes, I had this homemade, like, amazing product. And I was like, oh my god, why did it take me until I'm 40 years old to make some fucking butter? Because we think it's like this probably tedious, drawn out, long process, which, hey, maybe it can be if you milk the cow and you take it back and you get separate the cream from the, okay, that's going to add some more time to it. But not that much. And it's totally worth it. So making butter, for me, it was simple. And the final product looked and tasted so much freaking better than the shit in the store. I'm not kidding you. It tasted way better. And of course, you know me, I buy organic grass-fed butter from the store. Okay. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. But still, my homemade butter tasted better. But the secret is, for the past 6 months, I've been telling my wife that I suspect that they're going to start taking butter away from us. And you know what I mean? Like, you know how we had the whole egg shortage and they tested for avian bird flu, and then, oh, if one bird in the flock tests positive on their PCR test, which it's bound to happen, then there's suddenly eggs aren't on the shelf. And then what do people do who don't have a chicken flock, right? Well, they don't get this nourishing food source available to them anymore. I have this, maybe it's just because of my love for butter, I have this fear that there's going to be like some sort of nationwide butter shortage coming up in the near future. It's literally my worst nightmare because we eat at least a stick of butter per day. I mean, just roasting a chicken alone, I use an entire stick of butter. I actually just shared my chicken roasting recipe on my Patreon page, patreon.com/sunlightrx. And you can check it out there if you'd like. Make sure you have a stick of butter on hand, of course. But also the Patreon page is an awesome way to support this podcast and your health. And I post weekly there as well. Long story short, I've been stockpiling butter from the store for the past 6 months due to my maybe illogical fear of the butter shortage that's on the way. So if you love butter just as much as I do, you probably know that it costs $10 or even higher than that a pound for the grass-fed organic stuff. And then, you know, add 50% plus crypto tax if you live in California when you're purchasing your butter. That was a joke, kind of, but you know what I'm saying. The truth is, I'm going to try not to buy butter in the store again. Of course, you know that I don't need to be super strict about it, but I'm going to make homemade butter as often, like weekly. I'm going to make it a thing. I'm going to make it part of my lifestyle now. And I'm going to make it a priority to make my own butter, hence my recent Craigslist search for a Jersey cow. During this episode, right? Okay, I'm going to walk you through how I make homemade butter at the end. It's so easy. So if you're intimidated by this process, please don't be. It's easier than making sauerkraut. It's easier than making a hamburger. Most people can't make a hamburger. They burn it, or yeah, it's just easy. Let's just be, that's the point I want to, want you all to get. So, and I'm going to talk about the health properties of butter. I'm going to get into hormone health and cholesterol, and I'm going to talk about all of these things on the episode today. Now, before I get into my butter making process, show you the ropes there, teach you about the health properties of butter, I want to share about my upcoming practitioner training program. I know some of you are familiar and aware of this, and some of you will actually be joining me in the program, and I'm super stoked about that. But enrollment for my homeopathic practitioner training course is now open, and the training is 1.5 years long, classical homeopathic medicine intensive. Yes, there will be some quantum biology teachings in there as well, dietary, sunlight RX, etc. But the bulk of the program teaches you how to be a classically trained homeopathic practitioner, an informed and effective, a skilled classical homeopathic practitioner. There's a severe shortage of these practitioners today, and the world, I sense, really would be much healthier with more skilled homeopathic practitioners. So the training begins this September 2023, and the next enrollment isn't until next September 2024. So I do enrollment once a year, every September. So if you're inspired by this podcast, what I share on this podcast with regard to homeopathy and healing and health, and if you're keen to learn how to approach root causes of acute and chronic conditions, and if you want to learn how to approach acute and chronic conditions with literally, I'm not kidding you, more understanding than an MD, and that's not like, of course they have their place and their strengths, and especially surgeons, but I'm serious, you will understand health, sickness, disease in much more intricate, helpful ways than medical doctors. So if this is something that you're like, yes, I want to do this, this is something that would be very helpful to me, my clients, I want to start my own private practice, I want to work for myself, you can go to my site, heatharshepard.com/homeopathy, go to the practitioner training tab to learn more about the course, to set up a call with me to apply for the program. All right, let's talk butter. Okay. So first, if anyone has scared you out of eating butter, know that this is a huge crock of BS. I know if you're listening to this podcast, you likely already know that. That you also know that butter is one of the most nourishing fats available to us today. So lard was actually, now, do I know this 100% fact? No, but what I've read and seen in the literature and read in later farming books is that lard was actually the original and most prominent fat originally cultivated and used by people, especially in the States. But soon after, butter made a strong entrance as well. So of course, we know the government and health professionals have basically feared the shit out of people, particularly those born in the 40s, those born in the 50s, those born in the 60s, those born in the 70s. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people born in the 80s and later who fear butter and fat and cholesterol and all that nonsense. But especially these generations, 40s to 70s, they've actually scared the shit out of them with regard to cholesterol, with regard to butter, with regard to lard. These things literally will kill you and clog your arteries. Of course, that's what they tell you. Of course, we know it won't. But the low cholesterol, low fat agenda was shoved hard down these people's throats. It still is today, of course, but at least we're gaining some more insight and knowledge with regard to how much that is total BS. And we know that government and medical professionals encourage us to replace lard with Crisco, which is literally a can of hydrogenated vegetable oils, and have encouraged us to replace butter with margarine, which is also hydrogenated vegetable oils. Don't be fooled by, of course, I think everyone is aware like canola oil is a horrible choice for our health. But what we don't understand, and I did an episode relatively recently on avocado oil and why I'm not a fan of that, because they'll also try to get us with that. Okay, avocado oil is, there's worse oils, canola, grapeseed, safflower, sunflower oil. No, this should not be an oil. This should not be something we're eating, but they make things like veganase and stuff like that with these oils. That's not a good idea. Those aren't healthy oils or fats that we should be eating and putting into our body. So if you want to have sunflowers, then eat the whole thing and sprout them, or something like this to get an actual some sort of nutritional benefit out of them. So, I know most people listening to this podcast know how much of a bad idea these oils are for our health. If you're new to this, if you're like, I want to learn more, well, keep listening to this episode, but also tune into the avocado oil podcast episode I did as well. So the thing is, many people, particularly for people born in the 40s to the 70s, still believe that they need to ration their butter portions. They need to ration their animal fat portions, mostly because they believe they need to avoid high cholesterol and avoid gaining weight. Neither are true. High cholesterol is a hoax. It's a total hoax. The pharmaceutical industry literally makes south of $19 billion per year on statin drugs, right? The cholesterol lowering drugs, $19 billion. I mean, they're going to tell everyone to take a statin, and they do, including women of childbearing age, which will make you infertile, which will really harm the fetus. It's a really dangerous and bad idea. And every few years, they lower their recommendations around cholesterol. First it was like, oh, around the 300s. If it's above that, we should use some caution, right? Then it was, 250, right? And these are American units, okay? I know European units are different. So translate this over, just type it into Google and translate it over. So then it went, 300, then 250, then 200, then maybe 170. Okay, we don't want it higher than that. Okay, no higher than 150, right? Today, 100, no higher than 100. In fact, if it's lower than 100, all the better. The only people that this cholesterol lowering agenda is convenient for is the pharmaceutical industry and the $19 billion in their pocket. It's very inconvenient, unhealthy, damaging, dangerous for everyone else. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be very honest, and people are usually like, gasp when I say this, but I literally rarely look at blood work in my practice because it tells me virtually nothing. It doesn't tell me that much. This is one reason I started the practitioner training program, because I'm like, okay, we need to learn how to tell what's actually really important when a client comes into our practice. Who gives two craps if their cholesterol is 300? If somebody had a 300 cholesterol, I'd be like, rock on, sister, like amazing. But, and I'll talk about why, if you're like rolling your eyes right now, if you're trying to wrap your head around that one, but lab work doesn't tell me very much. There are very rare situations where I'll look at blood work to confirm something. Anemia is a helpful one for me in my practice, but doctors have no idea about the body anymore. They have no idea about symptoms. Oh, that's just weird. You stick your feet out of the covers at night. They think, oh, that's some, who cares about that? Oh, you cough, and then after you cough, it ends in a sneeze. Like, they will have nothing. They'll have no idea what to do with that symptom, and they'll think it's absolutely useless. These are very important symptoms, and we have to understand the body is going to tell us everything we need to know about the person, about the disease, about how to go about treating them. Of course, I do not diagnose, treat, or cure anyone. I have to say that, and I'm obliged to say that. But we have to understand that the way our medical system diagnoses us today is not helpful, leads to more stress, leads to more testing, leads to prescription drugs, or if you work with an ND or a functional doc, then it leads to more supplements and more genetic testing and more money out of your pocket without any progress. Let's be real. We have to understand what the body is saying, why it's responding in a certain way, mentally, emotionally, physically. We have to understand that. Then we can actually get somewhere with helping people get better. So literally everyone will test low or high for something if we test enough, if we test routinely, if we run enough tests, and if we keep using PCR testing methods. Guess how many people test positive for Lyme today and have zero recollection of being bit by a tick? Thousands, literally thousands. People in the Lyme treatment industry make thousands to millions of dollars off of people because why? They use, most of these practitioners, if not all that I've seen so far. Now there may be one in somebody out there who doesn't, but these people use, and these are medical doctors and alternative doctors, they use PCR testing to test for Lyme. Anyone who had their head out of their mask during C19 knows how inaccurate PCR testing is. It's literally like playing Russian roulette. Everyone's bound to test positive at some point. Everyone is. The leader of Africa tested bananas and papayas and, goat something or other, and tested, some of these things tested positive. And then what happened? He suddenly died unexpectedly, a week or two after he ran these tests. That's a mystery, right? Yeah, right. But so when we use PCR testing, everyone's bound to test positive at some point in time. And I'm using the example of lime here because so many people in the natural health world, people are obsessed with lime. Not that some people don't have it, okay, right? But this is a money-making industry. It's different than pharmaceuticals because, you know, typically they don't use pharmaceuticals, but I'm going to tell you, most people, even in the ND world, who are testing for Lyme, say, oh, well, you've got to get on antibiotics. And that's a crapshoot. We know that's going to get somebody with Lyme absolutely nowhere. I'm going to talk more about Lyme on next week's episode. Obviously, it's a subject I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about it, and I've worked in a Lyme clinic for a few years. When I was in my 20s, I saw all sorts of things, and I'm convinced at this point in time and in my practice and from the past 20 years of observing this, that Lyme is a money-making business for the most part. I think maybe if, you know, there could be a handful of people who do struggle with it, who actually have it. For the most part, they test people for it. They test positive because something on the test. They test all different markers, right? All the IGs and they test all of the immune markers. PCR, it's bound to come up. Something's bound. And then what is it? Oh, you have Lyme. And this is why you have this symptom. And this is why you have that symptom. To me, it's total horseshit. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about that next week. So, if a client sends me their blood work and it includes a cholesterol, you know, reading, do you know what I hope and look for? Literally, this is what I hope and look for. I hope that they have high fucking cholesterol. I hope that it's high according to the health professionals. Why? Because it tells me they have a fighting immune system. Because it tells me they have the ability to make hormones. If your cholesterol is too low, you cannot make hormones, period. You cannot make them. How many people today struggle with hormonal issues, menstrual issues, menopause issues, infertility issues? The lower your cholesterol, the lower your sex drive, the higher your risk of infertility, the higher your risk of cancer, the higher your risk of diabetes. We need to be raising our cholesterol, not lowering it. And here's where eating more butter really comes in, because butter is an awesome source of fats, animal fats, and cholesterol. Let's clear the air just for a minute. Your coconut oil says on the bottle of your coconut oil, it says a cholesterol-free food on the label. Other plant labels, almost all of them say this as well. Of course, we're not idiots. We know that plants don't contain cholesterol, but they get you with their marketing because we've been taught to think, oh, great, I'm doing something good for my health because I'm eating a cholesterol-free food. Whether we believe it or not, just by reading that, our brain then is triggered and thinks, oh, I'm doing something good for my health. Now, not that coconut oil is bad, because it's not, right? Especially if you eat the good stuff. It's not, it doesn't have to be bad. But what we need to understand is that unless you live in the tropics, your cholesterol requirements are going to be maybe slightly lower. Here's why. One reason why: cholesterol helps to regulate body temperature and our hormones, and it initiates your body's internal thermostat. And so we cannot just expect, because most people who live outside of the tropics are obsessed with coconut oil and they focus on that as their main oil. No, I don't eat butter. I don't eat animal fat. But I eat coconut oil. Okay, not that that's bad, but we need to make up for the nutritional difference, because coconut oil and every single plant fat, it doesn't contain any cholesterol. It doesn't contain any fat soluble vitamins. You need the fat soluble vitamins in animal fats like butter in order to regulate body temperature, in order to support the health of your hormones and cell membranes, in order to absorb minerals in your gut, and so forth. Coconut oil isn't going to assist in that process. It has other amazing health benefits. But we also need to, if you don't live in the tropics, then my personal suggestion is that animal fats, especially butter, needs to be the primary fat in the diet, and then coconut oil is like a second thought if you use it. All right, elephant in the room. Let's just dissolve this, and then I'll teach you how to make butter. Will dietary cholesterol clog my arteries, though? You know, will that happen? Okay, you're telling me you want butter. I love butter. This sounds really good. But what about my arteries? It's not going to clog your arteries. But you know what will clog your arteries? I'm going to tell you what will clog your arteries. Genetic predisposition. Genetic predisposition. If heart disease runs in your family, if diabetes runs in your family, if other heart conditions run in your family, if rheumatism runs in your family, these are some of the things that put you at a greater genetic predisposition for developing arterial plaque and heart issues in general. Okay, so first and foremost, the genetic predisposition needs to be in place. Certain prescription drugs will expedite the rate at which your arteries can develop plaque on them. Certain chemicals and toxins. If your liver can't detox properly, processed sugar, processed carbs, rancid oils, vegetable oils, man-made oils, suppressive therapies, these are the things that will clog the arteries. I know that that's some of that is some new information for most people, and you're like, whoa, wait, chemicals, toxic sugar. Okay, we know we can get on board with the processed sugar, the processed carbs, sure. The rancid oils. Here's the thing: the integrity of your arteries. What does it need to be integral? Well, it needs proper nutrients, it needs sunlight, it needs a proper light environment, it needs nature, but it also needs natural medicine. Prescriptions, antibiotics, these things they weaken the body in general. They turn on the switch for our genetic predispositions. And so then we think, oh, we ate too much butter or this or that, and that's what made our arteries clogged. Doctors are never going to tell you these things because they probably don't know it, or they're what they're taught in their education system is this one, it's literally just boom. It's fucking very narrow-minded. How do suppressive therapies clog arteries? Because everybody's probably like, wait, what? I'm just going to say this, it can't be proven in a scientific paper or study. You're not going to be able to Google it and look for a test that says how suppressive therapies clog arteries. You're not going to find this. Scientific papers are, for the most part, total horseshit. When someone says, show me the study for this or that, I literally can't. 80+% of scientific studies are flawed, and that's on the low end. Forget studies and look at history. This is my recommendation. That's the real study. Did anybody before vaccinations were brought in and antibiotics and all this stuff keel over from clogged arteries? That would be an anomaly. That would be unheard of. Did anybody who really spent time outside barefooted and got a lot of sunlight and didn't spend time in the computer and ate a local seasonal diet and didn't have medications get clogged arteries? No. Okay, so like, all we have to do is just look at history. That's the real study, and the amount of people in those studies is massive. So that's the studies I encourage people to look at. Look at history. What does history show us? What do human beings look like before vaccines, antibiotics, prescription medications? What did their physique look like before we got text neck and, all this spinal issues and postural issues from being in front of a screen? What did people actually look like before all this crap came in? That's the study. That's the most accurate study we have. So let's talk about homemade cholesterol-rich butter. whether there's a butter shortage coming up or not, I think there is, but I also have my son in Aquarius, so I think the government is going to blitz us, you know, no matter what. But history also shows that they actually do this. But why I'm going to make a point to make my own homemade butter is simple. Homemade butter contains way more, exponentially more nutrients than store-bought butter. Did I go and measure this and that? No. But what I did, how we can tell this and how I could tell this when I made butter is by the look of the butter. Mine way more yellow. The yellow was just boom. The stuff in the store, even organic grass-fed, it looks like a freaking pale white piece of Kleenex. I mean, that might be extreme. Some of it actually does, but it doesn't look yellow. It's not this bright yellow color that my butter turned out to be. And then you taste it, and the taste is like, whoa, that's rich, that's dense, that's like, there's flavor there. And last week's, was it last week's? I think last week was a food talk episode, and I talked about this in vegetables, how you could taste the vegetable and be like, that was grown under artificial light, or that was grown in really poor soil, because it tastes like nothing. The same is true with butter. Store-bought butter is heated to high temperatures, contains far less nutrients, and the butter I made is literally yellow, not white. Butter should be bright yellow, and even close to an orange color when you make butter from cows grazing on spring grass. So I'm sure many of you have heard of that, but when these rich spring grasses come in, there's a lot more nutrients in there, and literally the butter is, especially from Jersey cows, this almost deep orange color. Cows, they're ruminants, they have 4 stomachs, and those 4 stomachs allow it to turn the chlorophyll in grass to freaking vitamin A, vitamin D, cholesterol. It's literally a miracle of nature. When you make homemade butter, it will be richer in these nutrients because you're not going to heat your butter at all. There's literally not even a reason for it. We don't need to pasteurize our butter. Here's another bonus of homemade butter. It costs less than store-bought butter. $10 a pound for mediocre butter is a total crapshoot. It's unfair. That's like not even fair. Okay, you can make homemade butter for about $10 a pound, but I know you're like, oh wait, but that's not a savings. It's okay, hear me out here. After you make your homemade butter, you also have another product, which is buttermilk. If you've never had buttermilk, bless your soul, go make some or drink some buttermilk. It's literally like crack cocaine, but in a good way for you. And what do I do with my leftover buttermilk? Okay, ice cream, sourdough biscuits, grain-free brownies, a delicious snack. I even saw a recipe for Southern coleslaw the other day that had buttermilk in it, and I was like, yes, but I'm not going to use raw cabbage because we know that blocks iodine uptake in the thyroid. So I'm going to swap that and put in shaved carrots and use this buttermilk recipe with homemade mayo. It's like, what? This is insane. This is so good. And the nutrients in that. Okay, not only that, but bonus, when shit does hit the fan again and our food resources are limited or taken away from us, I want to have a healthy, sustainable, I want healthy, sustainable foods on hand, not some canned food BS. We know the end of the worlders, which I mean, it may sound like that from this episode, but I'm definitely not on that track. I'm not like this end of the worlder to an extreme level. Do I think, we want to be prepared for some things? Personally, I do, yes. And how I prepare for if another like food shortage comes in, like they take our eggs away, or C-19, you can only buy 2 steaks, or you can only buy this or that, right? So when that happens again, canned foods will not sustain me or my family or my animals. That literally won't. But homemade butter and the leftover buttermilk, It can be an asset. Making your own butter can be an asset to your life in many ways. It's like, to me, it's a freaking survival skill. And I'm gonna let you know when I get that Jersey cow or two. And I think it's gonna happen soon. So with all that being said, let me tell you how to make homemade butter. At least I'm gonna walk you through how I did it. And this is gonna be so short. It's literally, I can tell you this in a minute, and you're gonna be like, what? Literally. Now, I'm gonna share with you briefly how I did this. I'm not gonna write out step by step, but you can visit my Patreon page to get my official homemade butter recipe. So again, that's patreon.com/sunlightrx. And you can get the recipe there. If you're like, hey, walk me through this, I definitely will. Okay, so literally the only ingredient you need to make homemade butter is a Jersey cow. Just kidding. You can do it with that. The only ingredient you need, because most people don't have a Jersey cow, but I bet after this, the stock for Jersey cows will go up exponentially. All you need is heavy whipping cream. That literally, that's it. That's the only thing you need. That's the only ingredient you need. You can add salt and you can make compound butter when you're ready to get fancy with it, but literally to make butter, all you need is heavy whipping cream. So you make sure your cream is cold. You need to put it in a cold bowl. Cold is like your friend here because we need things to harden. Okay. We need everything to get hard. We can't let it, you know, and I made this in 90 degrees summer here. And it still came out fine because everything was cold. My cream was cold. The bowl I whipped it in was cold. So all you need literally is heavy cream, and you need some sort of mixer, like I literally used a handheld mixer that you would make whipped cream with, or cookies or something like that. So I just used a handheld mixer. Excuse me. So make sure your cream is cold, put it in a cold bowl, and on low, whip it as if you are going to make whipped cream. Okay. So whip it as if you're going to make whipped cream. As you go along with the process, gradually increase the speed. You don't want to initially increase the speed because the cream is just going to fly everywhere. And you don't want that. You want all the freaking butter and buttermilk that you can walk home with after this process. So you don't want it flying all over your kitchen. Okay, so start on low, gradually work your way up. And once you get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, here's the whipped cream. This is whipped cream. No, keep going. Go past the whipped cream point. Go to the point where you actually ruined your whipped cream. It's like, oh my God, I did it too much. I've ruined it. If you ever make that mistake and you're like, fuck, I went past the whipped cream point. Now it's this total mess. I got to throw it away. No, you don't. Keep going and you'll have butter. So if you keep going literally for probably 1 or 2 minutes, maybe less than that, then you're going to get this thing that looks like globs of fat and then water, like cloudy water. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, I just put up pictures of this. You'll see the end product of my butter, and then you'll see this visual of the globs of fat with water. Okay. And so this is, when you get to this point, this is butter and buttermilk. That's your final product. All you have to do from there is strain some things and you've got your butter. And again, you can visit my Patreon page to get my official homemade butter recipe. So I hope you feel inspired to eat more butter after this episode, to tell the doctors to just tell them to shove it when it comes to their cholesterol depopulation and money-making agenda. And also maybe this inspires you to get a Jersey cow. We'll see you next week. And then I'm going to be talking all about Lyme.